First of all, what do you make of today's events, which seem really quite bizarre? Is this really a case overall of Madrid now taking firm control?
Well, Madrid is attempting to take firm control, and I think the move of Soraya Sáenz de Santa Maria, who is an extremely impressive politician, was probably a very good decision on the part of Rajoy. But today we're starting to see the whole thing slightly descend into farce, because with the decision of the Fiscalia to prosecute, and the fact that, of course, Puigdemont and some of the leaders of the Catalan movement are therefore liable to, in theory, up to 25 years of imprisonment, obviously the stakes have risen. But then to have this Belgian minister offering asylum in Brussels, which is immediately then denied by his own government and turned around. I mean, we are getting into a sort of almost a Ruritanian sort of chaos.
We saw so much euphoria on Friday amongst the independent supporters with that declaration of independence, but how strong is that looking now in practice?
I don't think it's looking nearly so strong. Of course, it was a very emotional moment for all of those who believed it. I mean, all of those who've been packing the Plaza San Jaume in front of the Generalitat because it had a huge symbolic memories for them of the 1934, of 1937, and again, of course, when Franco occupied the city in 1940. But at the same time, one's got to look really at the reasons for the desire for Catalan independence. It's much more similar, say, to the Northern League in Italy. It was a question of trying to make sure that Catalonia did not pay such heavy taxes and did not make heavy contributions to other parts of Spain. And this is why they wanted fiscal autonomy. So there's emotion mixed up, if you like, with a certain element of hard-headed realism. But the real trouble, of course, is that the Catalan independence movements have started to realize that they were losing support. And this was their sort of last desperate throw. Already the figures are against them, with 55% against independence and only 41% for. You cannot impose such major changes when you haven't even got a majority. So this is why I don't think that it's going to go very much further, but I think that the dramatic events of today is only going to, should we say, complicate things. I don't think it's necessarily going to change them dramatically.
But if in enforcing its authority with direct rule from Madrid, we've already had charges, and if actual trials follow and perhaps jail terms, do you think that could reinforce the sense of Catalan hostility towards the rest of Spain?
I think that Rajoy and the Spanish government is in a difficult position. First of all, one has to remember that the decision to send in the police on the 1st of October to stop the referendum was actually not taken by the Madrid government. It was actually launched by a judge in Barcelona. And the trouble is that most people outside of Spain don't recognize sufficiently the fact that actually the Spanish judiciary is fiercely independent. So, the Madrid government does not have necessarily total control, and especially the Fiscalia General, which is the main public prosecutor, they don't follow the orders necessarily of the central government, far from it. So we don't know really what's going to happen in this particular way. I don't think that the central government wants to turn them into victims. This has been the great game which the Catalan independence movement has been trying to play, of trying to show itself almost as still the victims of Franquist repression, which is preposterous. They had a very large degree of autonomy, and they cannot really sort of claim that they are suffering from repression. And in fact, even when it came to the attempts to stop the referendum on the 1st of October, the television footage which emerged, which was taken entirely by TV3, which is entirely pro-Catalan independence, was, of course, only showing the brutality of a short number of policemen. We didn't see anything of the stone throwing at the police by some of the EU. So we're seeing a tremendous sort of propaganda battle being played out, which in many ways the Madrid government is always going to find itself being portrayed as sort of the big, brutal bully in this case.
We've heard a lot in recent days about Catalonia being on the brink. How optimistic or pessimistic are you about how things might unfold in the coming weeks?
Well, I've been discussing this with a number of Spanish friends and in Barcelona. I think a lot of the alarm is exaggerated. We're not going to see another sort of ETA, a Catalan ETA emerging with sort of, a terrorist resistance or anything like that. And I think that actually we'll probably see, after a number of complications in the meantime, we'll probably see things starting to calm down. And the vital thing is, of course, the elections on the 21st of December. Interestingly, Puigdemont was himself on Thursday about to announce elections, but then it was the extremists, particularly the coup, and Junqueras, his vice president, who then threatened resignation and to break the alliance, which forced him back into the idea of actually declaring independence, which, of course, has triggered the charges and now, of course, triggered his flight to Belgium.
Just finally, the events of the last, few weeks have taken a lot of the outside world by surprise. Do you think there is as far as international, do you think that international understanding of Catalan identity falls short in some way, and is that perhaps going to change now?
Well, I think that people have understood in many ways, if you like, the historic and the emotional and cultural version of Catalan independence. I mean, yes, the Catalans had their own country. They even had their own mini-empire. And it was really after the War of the Spanish Succession in 1716 when they really came under Madrid control. And they certainly were treated very badly, like many parts of Spain, after the Franquist victory in the Spanish Civil War. But to try to pretend now that, that this is a form of real repression and suffering, I think has now been shown probably to most of the world that it's a gross exaggeration. Where the Catalans go from here is difficult to tell. But one thing is certain, that the elections, I think, will show that there is not a majority in favour of independence. And I think the world will actually breathe a slight sigh of relief, and particularly the European Union, because the European Union does not need this sort of crisis at the moment. And they certainly don't want other separatist movements to start invoking the Catalan example as a reason why they too should split, because it would cause total chaos in the whole of the European system, with minor breakaway parts of countries trying to apply for entry to the euro and to the European Union itself, when their parent country, in the case of Spain, is going to veto it all the way through.